Shalom. It's February 26th, 2024. This is Parshat Tissa. I have to say this is one of the more complicated parshas in the entire Torah. I don't want to say this every week, but there are particular moments that are very, very difficult to understand here. So welcome, and let's see if we can get to some understanding of what goes on. At least I always like to say one of the goals that I have in teaching this is to try and see something new in it, since we think, since we've been reading this our entire lives, that we know it. In fact, when we read it the next time, we realize really how much we don't know, and how much we think we know, how much we probably could learn by reading it again and again. So, with no further ado, I'm going to go right into the reading of it. This is going to be chapter 32. Now, I'm avoiding the more dramatic moments in this. Well, the 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 moment that we're all familiar with. That is the golden calf. Okay, I'm gonna summarize the golden calf for 2 seconds, and and then go into what happens afterwards. Okay, so here it is. The story is complicated. Moses smashed the tablets after seeing the people of Israel worshiping the golden calf. Okay, I'm leaving that whole story on the side. Basically, the people are tired. They feel abandoned. Moses has been up in the mountain. It's taking too long. It's 40 days. They don't know what's happened to him. They co-opt Aaron. Aaron, stalls for time, gets them to part with their jewelry, and he melts down their gold and creates a molten calf. And the people then the following morning worship it. They bring sacrifices to it, and they break out in what we call mixed dancing, like kumalitzachek. God tells him that the people are acting this way. Your people, God says, and Moses comes down, and this is Moses' great moment of leadership. He kind of calms. Well, he doesn't. He says basically, "Let me take care of it." Moses then holds the tablets up and he smashes the tablets. He takes the golden calf, he grinds it up, and he puts the powder in water, and he has the people drink it. And then he basically, you know, tries to rescue the situation. He accosts Aaron. He says, "What did you do?" And Aaron responds, like, "What was I supposed to do?" Moses musters a force. The Levites, who are the real zealots, kill 3,000 people. It's a moment of real spasm of violence. Moses castigates the people and then beseeches God for forgiveness. Okay, so that in half a page in bold print is what happened. And now I'm going to go into the text. This is chapter 32, verses 31 on, just to watch the conclusion of it. Moses returned to God and said, "Ah, now this people has sinned a great sin. They've made themselves gods of gold. So now, if you would only bear aware of this sin, but if not, blot me out of the record that you have written." And God said to Moses, "Whoever sins against me, I blot him out of the record. So now go, lead the people to where I have spoken to you. Here my messenger will go before you, but on the day of my calling to account, I will call them to account for this sin." I'm just going to read it again slowly, okay? And I want to catch the audacity that Moses has in saying what he's saying to God, okay? And God's response. Basically, Moses says, "Look, you got to forgive these people. Chata ha'am hazeh, forgive them. They've made a great sin. They made gods of gold. They violated the commandment, the 10 commandments. The first, the second, you shall not make any gods of gold. You shall not have any other gods beside me. You shall not make any molten images." So now bear their sin. That is to say, forgive them. They made a terrible, terrible sin, a terrible mistake. And if you don't forgive them, and this is the key moment here, it's over. It's over, God. I don't want anything to do with this. Take me, and this is a moment of great irony, dramatic irony, literary irony, okay, because he's saying, Mecheni na mi sifrecha. Pray, blot me out of the record. We usually translate sefer as book, but sefer, book, is a kind of anachronism. Book, the idea of book, right? Book, as a bound, entity with pages in it, that didn't exist in the biblical time. What you had is page, you had scrolls, you had documents, you had pieces of parchment. All of those things are called sefer. In other words, a sefer in its narrowest sense, in the biblical lexicon, is a record, a document that's written most probably on a piece of parchment. Okay? So he's saying, look, blot me out of the record. And why is that irony? It's irony because we're reading the record, okay? And the book is called, or the record is called, Torat Moshe. So he's basically saying to God, if you don't forgive them, it's over. The book is over. The story is over. I'm done. I'm out of here. It's like literally saying, I'm out of here. It stops right here. And it's really an ultimatum to God. And we say that it's Moses has tremendous audacity here to challenge God this way, to say, I know what your plan is. I know what you're doing, and you need me to do this. This is your plan. And if you don't forgive them now, it's over. I'm not in. That's huge. Okay, go ahead. First question, Annette. Unlock. Unmute.
So, first of all, just maybe this is why Maimonides says that Moses is the greatest prophet, but that's besides.
Among other reasons, yes. Okay.
What I want to really say is that, is it possible that God is saying, oh, who cares, Moses, talk, big freaking deal. He can easily get Aaron or someone else to do the job.
No. It's not at all. Moses is, God, as we have seen, plays favorites with certain extraordinary individuals. Okay, we don't like that, okay, because each of us in our own narcissism thinks that we're extraordinary. Okay, we don't like to think that there are people who are more talented, more capable than we are. Okay, that each of us is infinite in front of God, but it's clear that God has vessels, instruments, humans who are uniquely endowed with an ability to connect to God, and God is using them. Okay, and in the biblical imagination, the idea that some people have certain talents and other people have other talents is not a foreign idea. We also understand this very deeply. Okay, in the world of basketball, there's only one Michael Jordan. There really is only one Michael Jordan. I mean, maybe I'm dating myself in an era, okay, but there's something extraordinary about this kind of player. There was only one Gretzky. There's only one Leonard Bernstein. There's only one Yitzhak Perlman. These are extraordinary, gifted human beings who have this talent that ordinary people like us, as much as we want to be that, we're not. Okay, and we get it. We understand it. So Moses is this extraordinary talent beyond the ability of every single talent. Go ahead, Marlene.
But didn't God give him a little bit of a step up here when he said it's your people that are doing this? He gave him the imprimatur that Moses had more power.
No, okay, there's lots of ways to interpret it. I interpret it a little differently. It's like, when the father says to the mother, your son, your child is misbehaving. Okay, that's what's going on, I think, which is there's a bit of banter here, that and here I want to present God in a more affectionate way, which is that God really loves Moses, and God
Well,
and there's it's hard to really, peel off what this relationship is, and we're going to see in a second where this relationship goes, because it is a relationship that has at its core a very, very deep connection. And it's like, this is, I'm disappointed and you're leading. Go ahead, Paul.
Did in fact Hashem accede to Moshe's request by not including his name in Tetzaveh?
Good question. Last week's Parsha did not have Moses' name on. Lots of reasons why Moses' name is not in this Parsha. What, I won't even try that. But I love the explanation that the Parsha usually falls out on the Yort side of Moses, usually 7th of Adar, which is why Moses, whatever.
and
Good,
he died on his birthday.
good. Yes, good point. But I gotta leave it. Okay, let me go on here. Okay, because there's lots of material here. Okay, so get me out of the book. So it's like Moses has thrown the gauntlet down to God. You got to forgive them. You got to forgive them or else. Okay, so just a second. My thing. All right. God said to Moses, "Whoever sins against me, I'll blot him out of the book. Go lead the people where I've spoken to you. Here my messenger will go before you. But on the day of account, I will call them account for them." I'm not really sure what this means. Okay, don't ask me what that means. But there is this issue here that the main issue is God has said to the people, I am not going, I'm not going to go before them. Okay, here we go. Let me get this. God said to Moses, go up from here, you and the people that you brought up from the land of Egypt to the land which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will give it to your seed. I will send a messenger before you, and the messenger will drive out the Canaanite, the Amorite, the Hittite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, the Yebusite to the land flowing with milk and honey. Boom. But I will not go up in your midst, for a hard-necked people are you, lest I destroy you on the way. I'll just kind of hold on to that, okay, which is, and Alana, I see your hand, I'll get it in a second. So it's, Moses has beseeched God to forgive him. And it's like God is saying to Moses, I'm going to hold on to this for a second, but I have made up my mind, God says. You're going up, but I'm not, my presence, my essence, my whatever, I'm not going to be there. I can't be there in your midst. I'll have to send an angel messenger something, because if I'm in there, you're gonna annoy me so much that I won't be able to control myself. I'll destroy you. Okay, God, you have to give God credit here. God is aware of his own limitations. Okay, that he's saying, I'm going to get so angry because the people are so stubborn that the anger is going to be so much that I'm not going to be able to endure this. So I personally, in my presence, however anthropomorphic that sound, I can't be there. I'm going to put, Gabriel there, Michael, or where I'll have another, in essence there, but I can't do this. I can't be there with you because something's going to happen. I'm going to destroy you. Okay. All right. Alana, I'm going to allow you to ask a question. Go ahead. Then Susie.
I'm just going back to what you said before about
Yeah.
Moshe asking God to forgive. It reminds me of Abraham begging God when he wanted, when he was going to destroy Sodom. So Abraham said maybe 50 people, then 40
Yes.
people, and 30 people. So it's okay to ask to plead something from God and not to accept it right away.
Absolutely. And I think the connection is very powerful. I think that's worth a whole lesson in terms of how biblical characters argue with God. And here, it doesn't go through the stages of argument that Abraham does, which only tells you that there's a different kind of a relationship here between Moses and God and Abraham and God. Abraham says exactly what you said, 50, 40, whatever, 30, and there's a kind of give and take. And God, in that story, God enjoys this. Here, there's not a lot of joy. This is a real crisis. It's a real rupture. And Moses is really being urgent. And he's saying, if you do not do this, I will not, you can count me out. So that's not an argument as much as it's an ultimatum. Susie, go ahead.
So it says the people that you took out of Egypt. Whatever happened to Anival Malach?
Yeah. Great. Okay. So there's a lot of confusion here. And I'm going to just, opt for this interpretation, which is that God is making Moses the malach, right? We looked at that a few weeks ago. That's a very complicated passage, and that there seems to be an identification between the malach and Moshe. Okay, it's complicated. I'm not going to be able to kind of split this under the magnifying glass as we probably should. Nevertheless, I also want to say it's the play also is God takes them out of the picture. It's you brought them out, and that has a very clever literary effect. Let's go on for the sake of time. Okay, so this whole crisis, I will not go up in your midst. That you're going to get the response now. So here it is. When the people heard this evil word, hadavar hara hazeh, oh my God, it's terrible. The terrible news that God is not going up. Vayitabalu, they mourned. Velo shatu isha dedio alav, no man put on his ornaments again. I'm not exactly sure what that means. They had jewelry, whatever. They seem to be loaded with jewelry, the Israelites coming out of Egypt, because they gave plenty of jewelry to Aaron to make the calf, and they're still, with some jewelry. Okay, the point is, though, that the minute they are told that God is not going out, they go into this deep mourning. And I'm just going to close this for a second and say, the threat of abandonment. Okay, that's what it is. I've said this hundreds of times. There are so many things that people can endure in life. Really, people can endure lots and lots of crises. Okay, injury and loss even. But what people cannot endure on some level is abandonment, right? Or, abandonment from a beloved, a spouse, abandonment from a parent, right? If a parent abandons a child, right, that it just is, it's the ultimate trauma, okay? And of course, you got to make mention of everything going on in the world. And you see what the trauma, the deep trauma of the hostage crisis that we're going through is, it's not abandoned. Of course, nobody abandoned anybody on their own will, but it's the notion that they're somehow alive and we can't get them, and the fear on both sides, we're abandoning them and they're abandoning us, and the layer upon layer upon layer of trauma that is causing is beyond expression. Okay, the country is in a kind of spasm of trauma because we can't live with the idea that we have abandoned them. That's Israel speaking to itself, and we can't believe that they would think that we have abandoned them, etc. And it just coiled in on itself in such a deep thing. So here we have this moment where the people have heard God say, "I'm not going with you," okay? And they perceive, they overhear it, which is clever. Okay, it's a beautiful kind of dramatic irony moment where the people have their ear to the conversation that exists between God and Moses. And the whisper goes into the camp and they go, God's not coming with us. God's not coming. God's not coming with us. And that when the minute they hear that, they go into a deep mourning. They really react in the sense of being threatened by this divine abandonment. And I'll just say one last thing about that, which is, in the moment of crisis, not only, abandonment of a spouse or abandonment of a parent or abandonment of a child or abandonment of a friend, but the thing that bothers people the most, I think, is divine abandonment. That is to say, I feel that God is not with me. The idea or the feeling that God will have abandoned me is for many people of faith the thing that they cannot bear. They cannot bear. And that's especially when people are in a state of suffering, they don't want to feel that God has abandoned them. Susie, go ahead.
I think maybe it's a kind of midah keneged midah. They abandoned God with the golden calf.
Of course it is, okay, but
Now God is saying, "I'm going to abandon you," and they're saying, "Ah,
sure, but that's not
that's the
fair. It's
moment- that's the
it's
moment
not a
of
fair fight. It may be it may be measure for measure, but it's like, how could you? God, come on, you're God. You're not. You don't treat us like
But that's the moment of tshuva.
Of course, of course.
Well,
Bob, one second. Bob,
If
Tova.
the parshiot are not in historical sequence,
Yes.
and if this happened first, then followed by the building of the Mishkan and everything, is this the fact that God is saying now, I'm not going to dwell within the golden calf in your midst, but later, in the earlier parshiot, I will dwell with you in the Mishkan. And so he
Easily,
does
nice to
follow
say
through.
it. So Rashi is the one that and among others who makes the comment that the 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 instructions for the Mishkan come after the Golden Calf episode, so that the Mishkan, the tabernacle, becomes a way for the people to focus their energies. They obviously need something physical and tangible, and the Mishkan, the sanctuary, comes as a concession to them, and that God will be in their midst because of that. Yes, go ahead. Tova, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to say about the abandonment.
Yes.
The ultimate abandonment, of course, was the Holocaust.
Okay.
And the people feel that he abandoned them. And there are people who never read. One of the reaction is psychological reaction. Okay, then I'm going to abandon you. And they never return to Judaism. I know a lot of people who
Absolutely.
refuse to be, that's the only way they can keep their mind together.
There's no question about that, and we have many cases of that. I've seen that also in the survivor community and among children of survivors especially, it's a trauma that is very, very difficult for people to express and articulate. And I don't know how to reconcile it, other than to say, the living, breathing community of Jews that celebrates and is enveloped in this life is trying in its most sincere way to compensate for that sense of abandonment. Okay, and that itself is a complicated thing. Let's go on. We go on. So the people are in a crisis. And then God says to Moses, say to the children of Israel, you're hard-necked people. If one moment I were to go in your midst, I would destroy you. So now take down your ornaments for yourselves, that I may know what I'm about to do with you. Okay, so we get, God again says, you're awful. The people strip themselves of their ornaments. Fine. Okay, I'm not complicated. I don't even know how to deal with that. So then we have this other little aside here, very complicated little story about how the people manage in this moment. Okay, so they have this crisis. They're in mourning, but there's some time here. Moses takes his tent, goes outside the camp, not far, and he calls it Ohel Moed. He calls it a tent of appointment, and it was whoever besought God would go out to the tent that was outside the camp. And it was whenever Moses would go out the tent, all the people would rise. They would station themselves at each entrance of his tent, and they would gaze after Moses until he had come into his tent. And it was whenever Moses would come into the tent, the column of cloud would come down and stop at the entrance of the tent, and he would speak with Moshe, and all the people would see the column of cloud standing at the entrance of the tent. What we have here is a picture of how it's going, okay? Moses sees that their people are too affected by this moment, so he engages in a bit of separation himself. He takes himself outside, but he comes back into the camp from time to time, and the people, it seems, are on their best behavior with regard to Moses. They show deference to him. They get up in front of their tent. They stand and they watch and they bow down, each at the entrance of his tent. And this then is the key statement of the relationship between Moses and God. God would speak to Moses face to face, as one speaks to his neighbor, Ish el Re'ehu. Now, when he would return to the camp, his attendant, the lad Joshua, would not depart from the tent. All this means here, I'm just going to close it for a second, is you have this relationship. It's a very, very close relationship. It's a relationship that the Torah is describing almost in very human terms, in intimate terms, that there's this intimate partnership between God and Moses, and that the dialogue that takes place between God and Moses is one where they're not equals. Of course, they're not, but it's as close as you can get between God and a person and a human being, right? Face to face is an expression of proximity and closeness. They're never going to be equals, obviously, but there's something that is close to that in this relationship, and that sets the stage for the next kind of moment, which is, I want to really know you. This is Moses going to say. I want to know what your essence is. And you can't really know, but I'm close to you. And it's almost as if both of them are saying the same thing. And in a way, the whole Torah hinges on this moment, a moment in which God really has to make known God's essence to Moses. We can almost say that Judaism relies on this premise that God, who is apart and beyond, unknowable, God has to break through to humanity. The whole religion is based on the idea that something has to kind of come through to us. And the way, the instrumentality for God to come through to us is that there has to be a receiver, okay? A receiving person and receiving people. The people themselves are complicated, difficult people, and they're not able or worthy sometimes of being the collective receiver. They need this extraordinary receiver to receive it. And the receiver is not God. The receiver is a human being. This differentiates us, by the way, from Christianity, where Christianity basically tries to answer this problem by saying that God needed to become a human. God needed to incarnate, to become in a body in order to accomplish the same thing, that is to make God known to human beings. We can't deal with that. It's not only we reject it after Christianity, the idea of God being anything else but God is incomprehensible to us. So the best we get is Moses, who is an extraordinarily human being, okay, who will always remain a human being, but unlike most human beings, there's an excellent quality to him in the sense that he is tuned to the frequency more than everyone else. Okay, and I love that image. I love the allegory, the metaphor that, you know, God is a transmitter and we are the receivers, and that the message is connected to the quality of the emission and the quality of the receiver. If you have a very, very finely tuned antenna, you will get every single echo of the solar system, right? But if you don't, if you have a very poor antenna, you won't get it. Moses is the most exceptional radio antenna. Moses is able to capture all of the divine emission, the divine radiation. Okay, he's an exceptional instrument. All right, so then we get the following. Now, not only did Moses say, if you don't forgive them, get me out of the book. Moses is saying to him, to God, so you know me, and you think you know me, and fine, and we have this relationship, but I really don't know you. I want to know who you are. And in order for this to continue, not only do you have to forgive them, but you have to make yourself known to me, because I have to be able to convey that to them. So here's the challenge, God. A, forgive them, and B, make yourself known to them. So Moses says to God, see, you say to me, bring this people up. But you have not let me know whom you will send with me. First of all, before we get to making yourself known to me, you're telling me I'm on my own. I can't be on my own. And now, you said, I have known you by name, and you have found favor in my eyes. Okay, so you like me. God, you've told me that you like me. Now, if I have, pray, found favor in your eyes, that is, if you do really like me, let me know your ways, that I may truly know you, in order that I may find favor in your eyes. In other words, our relationship it's not what you think it is. You say, I have found favor in your eyes, meaning you say, I am the instrument for you. You say that I'm your person. You say that I'm your partner, okay? But for this to work, I need to know more about you. If I am to be your partner, it's not enough for you to know me. I need to know you. He said, so God answers him, if my presence were to go with you, would I cause you to rest easy? In other words, okay, so what you're saying is you're objecting to the fact that I don't want to go inside the people. So are you saying then that I'll make it better if I go with the people? It's a question. If my presence were to go, panai yelechu, panai is face. And it's a very odd word here, but it's we translate it as my presence. In other words, if I am going to go among the people, is that going to make it better? Will I cause you to rest easy? Moses says, if your presence does not go, do not bring us up from here. So again, he's going for broke here. He's saying, this is the way it has to be. It's tremendously audacious. Moses is instructing God in how to be God. He's saying, you need to do this. A, if you don't forgive them, get me out of the book. And B, if you don't go up, forget it. You can't bring us up. We're going to die here. We're going to stay here. For wherein, after all, is it to be known that I have found favor in your eyes, I and your people? Is it not precisely in that you go with us, that we are distinct, and I and your people from every people that is on the face of earth. In other words, this is the way it has to be. I'm telling you, God, this is the way it has to be. You have to be with us. And in order for you to be with us, I have to know who you are. I have to know your essence. And if you don't, it won't work. God said to Moses, okay, also this word you have spoken, I will do, which means, okay, I agree. For you have found favor in my eyes, and I have known you by name. In other words, I have this relationship with you, Moses, and if this is what you're saying to me, then I guess I have to do this. I have to be with you, and I have to disclose to you a little bit more of me. And it's interesting that God really doesn't want to do that, but Moses forces him to do that. And so what it's teaching us is that God is learning how to work this relationship out too. We have to kind of, put aside all of our philosophical notions about God being perfect and all-knowing and everything. It's clear from the beginning of the Bible that God has made a lot of mistakes. Okay, that the world that God creates is doesn't work out the way God wants. Human beings don't work out the way God wants, and things are not functioning. And so here it's like God and Moses are in this conversation, and Moses is saying, look, I can't do this without you. You think that I'm going to do this without you. I can't. So A, you have to forgive them, and B, you have to be with them, and C, you have to show me a little bit about you in order for me to know that I'm your partner. It's fine for you to know me, you're God, but I need to know you. I'm Moses. Okay. So he's saying, I have known you, you have found favor in my eye. This is what God's saying, and I have known you by name. In other words, I know your essence, Moses, and I guess I have to show you my essence. Then he said, sorry, this was Moses saying, pray, let me see your glory. Har'eni na et kodecha, which is, I need to know more about you. He said, God says, I myself will cause all my goodliness to pass in front of your face, and I will call out the name of God before your face, that I show favor to whom I show favor, that I show mercy to whom I show mercy. Now you realize why this is such a complicated passage. It's hard in the Hebrew, it's hard in the English. It hardly makes sense. You need a kind of translation here beyond the translation. But basically what's going on here is he's saying, look, I will cause all my goodly cult to thee. I will have myself pass before you, but God doesn't have a body, whatever that means. So I'm going to have something pass before your face. You will have an encounter with me. And in this encounter, I will call out in the name of God. So that already is complicated, which is what I guess it's saying is that God is going to call out in the name of God, which is redundant. It's I'm going to call out in my name. But he's saying, I'm going to call out in the name of God. He's almost speaking himself in the third person. So I'm going to pass before you and call out in my name before your face. And I'll show favor, and I'll be merciful to you. And God then says a second thing, you cannot see my face, for no human can see me and live. So here's a problem. I'm going to pass before you, but you can't see my face. You can't see my truest essence, because if you do, you're going to die. It's like putting uranium in front of you. It's so radioactive, so powerful that you'll die. So you can't see me. So one thing, I'm going to pass before you. Two, you're not going to see my face. Three, God said, here's a place next to me. Station yourself on the rock. Okay? And it shall be when my glory passes by, I will place you in the cleft of the rock, and screen you with my hand on you until I have passed by. In other words, I'm going to take you, Moses, and this is going to be on the top of the mountain, because you're going to come up to the mountain that we're going to see in a second. I'm going to put you on a rock on top of the mountain, and I'm going to put you in a cleft in the rock. That is to say, there's a crevice somewhere in the rock so that you'll be able to be behind the rock. And not only will you be behind the rock in a crevice in a rock, in a cleft in a rock, but I will have, God saying, my hand over you, so that when my essence comes to you, you will be shielded. Go understand what that is, okay? It's impossible to comprehend. The best I could do is to say that, to use kind of science fiction imagery here, that Moses is standing on top of the mountain, and that there's going to be this tremendous kind of beam of something, okay, that will blind and kill Moses because it's so powerful that Moses needs to be shielded in a force field from it, and that God himself needs to shield Moses behind a rock because the energy will be so powerful that Moses could be killed by this. And that's my essence, okay? And at the moment that I will make myself known to you, I will remove my hand. You shall see my back, but my face you shall not see, okay? Meaning, if you see my face, you're going to die. I'll take my hand up, but you won't see the essence. So you're not going to get the full wattage of my presence. You're going to get a fraction of my wattage because I'm protecting you. You will never be able to see me completely. Okay, this is not an equal relationship. This is a relationship of unequals. All right, but in order to get as close as possible to you, this is what will happen. Okay, so we talked about that. We've talked about the Moses to God. I read this with a bit of the commentary here. I'm going to just go forward because we get to the climax of the story. I need to know your ways, God. God is saying, you're not coming. If Moses says you're not coming with us, nothing doing, etc., etc. I'm just going to skip it. Oh, I wrote this all out, but we're going to skip. Okay. Then God says, this is chapter 34. God said to Moses, carve yourself 2 tablets of stone, like the first ones, and I will write on the tablets the words that were there on the first tablets, which you smashed. Be ready in the morning. Go up in the morning to Mount Sinai. Station yourself for me there on the top of the mountain. That's where this is going to take place. No man is going to go up with you. Neither is any man going to be seen on the mountain. Neither all the sheep or oxen to graze in front of this mountain. So he carved the 2 tablets of stone like the first ones. Moses started early in the morning and went up, and went up in the Mount Sinai as God commanded him. And he took in his hand the 2 tablets of stone. God came down in the cloud. He stationed himself beside him there, and he called out the name of God. But Ilana, go ahead. Unmute. You have to unmute. Press the space bar.
Okay. So in the beginning of the book of Shmot, when God assigned Moses to take the children of Israel out of Egypt, Moses asked, if they ask me who you are, if the children of Israel ask me who you are, what should I say to them?
Yes.
Who is this God? So the answer was from God, Eheye Asher Eheye.
Right.
I will be whoever I will be.
Yes.
So he introduced himself to Moses before in 3 words,
Yes.
which I never understood. I know I am, I will be with you, with the children of Israel. I will be their God forever, like I was before.
So what is that? What did it mean there? Okay, I like the interpretation that there's a word missing. Not that the text is corrupted, by missing it. But it's I will be with you. Ehyeh imcha asher yeh imcha, and that's a short. Ehyeh asher yeh is a kind of code for I will be with you as I will be with you. When he's saying, and it's not an answer. When in this reading of that passage, when Moses asks God, who told me, who's talking to me? God doesn't say, I am God. God just says, I'm going to be with you. I'm with you. I'm with you. And it makes a certain amount of sense, which is you're not ready to know yet me. We're just starting out. It's like it is it's a parable of a real intimate relationship. The relationship doesn't start at the deepest part of knowledge. The relation starts out with, look, I'm with you. And then I get to know you a little better. Go ahead, Ruth. Sorry.
I'm sorry. But maybe Yashariah is if you will be with me, I will be with you.
Also very good.
Something like this.
Good. Ruth.
So it's funny because I was writing notes as you were talking, and some of the things I wanted to say was some of the stuff that Ilana just said. But we also have, we have two different scenes. We have the burning bush, and Moses kind of politely says, so God, if they ask me who's sending me, what should I say? And it's kind of a polite conversation. And there's parallel construction because he says, yeah, share it, yeah. And in this scene, he says, Richamti et asher richamti. It's like parallel construction. But also in the first episode, he's kind of asking politely, who's sending me? In this episode, he's saying, Re'e ata, look, buddy. It's like, look, buddy. And I think of a scene like where a player or a coach, puts his face 2 inches from the referee's face, and like, nice. Look, buddy, it's so confrontational.
Yeah, there is a bit of that. There's a bit of, and of course, the intimate relationship includes, this difficulty. Okay, good. Yeah, Nanette, go ahead.
So it seems to me that in this Parsha, the relationship between Moses and God is changing. It's like God got more than he bargained for with Moses. He figured Moses is a great pawn. He could tell him what to do, but now Moses is actually speaking up for himself. So I don't think God didn't expect this.
I agree with you. It's even God is being surprised here by the audacity of this human being. Look, imagine, the whole story changes with different kinds of characters. Imagine if you had Joshua in there. Joshua is the much more obedient, non-confrontational, he does whatever he's told character, right? And it would be a totally different story with that kind of character. Even Abraham, there's a lot of, depth to Abraham. Not that Moses doesn't have it, but there's just, he's got a personal life. He's got the wife, the son, the this, the that. There's just, every kind of relationship is different. And I guess the sermon here also is that, of course, every one of us has a different relationship, but even in the course of our lives, we're different. We're different, when we are younger than we are older. We're different today from tomorrow and yesterday. And what religious life kind of shapes us and teaches us to experience is that we ourselves become new in this relationship on a daily basis, just like this relationship is changing too, Moses and God. Go ahead, Bob.
Moshe grew up in a palace. He's the only one.
He changed. Go ahead, Bob.
2 quick comments. The first is that I think Moses is also teaching Hashem the benefits of stiff-neckedness, as well as Jewish pride. Yeah. And the second comment, which maybe you're coming up to, is the 13 attributes.
Well, we're coming up to that.
So. Hashem's names and attributes as an answer to what he meant, what he's going to pass by and share.
All right. So this is the biggest puzzle. We're gonna go right there now and see what happens. So this is, I'm going to go back to the text here. So I'm going to read this very carefully. I have some interpretation coming up, and we're running out of time, so I got to do this on the fly here. God, Vayered Adonai Be'anan. God comes down in a cloud. So back to the top of the mountain. Moses is on a rock. He's in a crevice in a rock. God, he's getting ready for this. There's nobody there. It's a sterile zone. Nobody else but Moses and God. No animals are there. It's very, very peculiar. God comes down in a cloud. He stationed himself beside him there. Okay, so there's a moment where God's presence, and I should have put a capital H here, beside him, Moses there. Now we don't know, and called out the name of God. We don't know who the subject of the verb called is. Vayikra means literally, and he called. So we have two characters here. I'm going to use the word characters. There's God and Moses. God clearly comes down in a cloud. God, it seems, stationed himself beside Moses. Who's calling? So one way to read this is to say, well, God is just saying his name. Another way to say this is Moses, in this moment, is calling God's name, is saying God's name, okay? I actually like the second interpretation better than the first, okay? The first one, I'm sorry, God. It doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense that God would say, God, right? My name, it's like to speak of myself in the third person. It would be, lahavdio, the different, it would say, Elliot, right? Just go, everybody try that. When you meet a person and you say, it's not like you're saying, my name is Elliot. It's, there's I don't know, it doesn't work, right? It's Moses already is aware that God is there. So Moses is the one that is calling in God's name. It's a human reaction. It's a human response to say, God, okay? So God, he calls out in the name of God, B'Shem Adonai, which means this is different from what God intended. God intended to say his name, and Moses already is leaping to the challenge and saying God's name before him. And then God passed before his face, before Moses' face, Vayikra. And again, we have the same problem. Who's calling out? Who's calling out to whom? So you could say, well, God is saying his name, but I'm going to say maybe Moses is saying his name. And then he says what Bob correctly said. Tradition calls the 13 attributes. Adonai, Adonai, Rachum Echanun, Erechapayim. And we know this verse. We sing it all the time. It's high holidays, it's holidays, etc. And this is God's essence, okay? So I want to interpret it the following way. In this moment, okay, God comes down. He stations himself beside him there and called out the name of God. What we don't have here in this little verse is a clock. We don't have a stopwatch. And if we put a stopwatch in here, all of a sudden, this may mean something different from how we think of this moment ordinarily. And the moment is familiar to us because it's part of the liturgy. It's part of the prayers, okay? We daven this verse, okay, all the time. Adonai, Adonai, Arakum V'chanu. If you've been to a high holiday service, you've had this, in your ears, okay? And I'm pretending I never heard it before. And I'm pretending to read it with new eyes. And I'm saying, God comes down in a cloud. Okay. God stations himself before him. Okay. How long? How long does it happen? And is it a second? Is it a flash, a microsecond? Or is it a minute? Or is it an hour? Or is it 2 hours? And what is happening in that moment where everything, in my imagination now, everything that's happening in this is suspended. It's like the cloud and this beam of light, and Moses is there, and Moses is getting, it's like all the gigabytes of God's information are being transmitted to Moses. I use that image very, very, not discreetly, but with intention. I think it's the closest way to capture what I think is going on. There is a kind of, he's pressing send here. It's literally like that. God presses send. When you press send on an email, you do not know what happens. Your information gets chopped up into little bits of information, and it gets spread all over the world. The internet goes in through all sorts of, microchips and processors, and then it gets to the other end. It gets reassembled at the other end and put into your email box. And I think that's a lovely analogy, which is that the information is being emitted from the heavenly source. God literally, or whatever, presses send. The information comes down, and Moses receives it, reassembles the information, processes it, and understands it. And then and that takes place in a split second, in a minute, in an hour. We don't know how long, but it's enough of a contact moment for Moses then to call God's name. He says, Adonai. That's what I got. I got your name. I got your essence. I got whatever I could get. I'm not going to get the full essence because I'll be dead. I got the most fraction of your essence that a human person could get. And then he passes before his face, and that's when Moses responds and says, Adonai, I understand who you are now. You're not this powerful, crazy, force that's going to destroy everything. You're the God. You are God who shows mercy, favor, and long suffering. What I just got in that moment of communication was that you are long suffering. You're abundant in loyalty and faithfulness. You keep loyalty to the 1000th generation, bear iniquity and rebellion and sin, not clearing the guilty. I got this information here that you are serious about our accountability to you, and yet, most importantly, you will forgive. You're a forgiving God. You're a compassionate God. This is my human response to the information that has been received here. I have received this information, and I'm saying this to you. And wait 1 second. Wait, there's more. And having received that, Moses bows down. I respect that, God. I adore that. I respect that in you. And then he says the following: I have a favor. If I found favor in your eyes, come with us. That's all I want. You've shown me who you are. You're compassionate. So now I'm only going to ask you this once. Be with us. Just be with us. It's a hard-necked people. They're tough. They're rotten. They're disgusting. They're horrible. They're awful. But you need to be with us. I should have put this in yellow also. Forgive us. Make us inheritance. Okay? And that's the climax of this moment. Okay? 1 second, Susie, I'll go back. I want to just reread it a second. It says, this is how I read this. Okay? And I realize that it may be different from the way that we're used to reading it, but to me, it makes a tremendous amount of sense. Okay? He goes up to, and he's going to have this moment. God comes down in a moment, stations him there. And there's like this beam of connection in the cloud. It's this mysterious moment. And we don't know how long it lasts. Moses says, I get it. God, you're God. I get it. And now God passes before him. it's almost like this now comes next. You get my essence, and now Moses, it's a human response. Adonai, Adonai, Erachum v'chanun, Erech apayim v'rav chesed v'emet. So when we daven this, when we pray this, we are, in my opinion, we are reiterating what Moses said to God. It's quite audacious, if you ask me. This is the audacity of Jewish prayer. We know what God is because this is what Moses said. Okay, Moses says this. You are compassionate. You're compassionate. You're compassionate. You will. I mean, in this iteration of your covenant of compassion, you're going to hold us to account even to the 1000th generation. Fathers upon sons. That changes throughout the Bible. We'll leave that aside for now. Okay, but this is who you are, and I have a favor, and my favor is be with us and forgive us. And that moment is the moment. I mean, it's like God has made known what God is to Moses, and Moses gets it, and Moses is not letting God off the hook here. This is what makes it brilliant, joyful, amazing, audacious, stunning, which is in the moment of God's disclosure of his godliness to Moses, Moses takes the prerogative and says, you got to forgive them. That's my reading of it. Now we got Susie, we got Marlene, we got John. Go ahead.
I wonder if there's another possible metaphor aside from pushing send. What about mind meld? Or is that
Yeah,
too
nice, very nice. I like the mind meld. You know, anybody Star Trek fans here, you know, it's God and Moses having a mind meld that works too. You know, it's been such a while since I've watched deeply Star Trek, so it's not at my fingertips. Okay, we got Marlene. Go ahead.
Well, I think that it's an interesting juxtaposition to where he had said, oh, just take me out of the story. Now all of a sudden he's back in the story and come with us.
That's his greatness, I think. I think his greatness is that he's able to put it all. He's putting it all in front. It's a kind. I don't want to say it's a sacrifice, but I can't think of anything better to say. It's like I'm going to risk everything for this moment. It's quite amazing, you know. And I would say this without being too political, and saying that the mark of greatness of a leader is the willingness of the leader to sacrifice himself, herself, for the sake of the country, the nation, the people. What makes a leader less than great is her willingness to sacrifice the people, the country, for the sake of the leader. And I think that binary, who sacrifices to whom, is and who risks what for whom, is really the defining nature of leadership. Moses is risking it all. Lesser leaders are less likely to risk it all. They will risk the health of their peoples for the sake of themselves. John, go ahead.
Well, this is a question about the communication from God to Moses. Often we read, how does one know God? Is it through the intellect or through intuition? And so the question is this an intellectual discussion, or is this something wholly intuitive on the part of Moses?
So it depends what day you're reading this. It depends what you've eaten or smelled or drank before reading this, right? You know, and it depends on what where you know what environment you're in. Maimonides, as we've said, you know, reads this one way. The mystics, I'm sure, you know, Bob, maybe you'll say that they read it another way. And depends where you are coming from on the spectrum, you know, in terms of how you will respond to this. You know, when we are less likely to to close our eyes and leap into an imaginative space where God can be imagined in this way. It's very difficult to consider, this kind of communication, let alone, God even speaking to you, right? However, if we allow ourselves the mystical imagination where, this kind of intimacy between us and God is possible, then we can take our own imagination to the top of the mountain, as I tried to do here. Not, not terribly mystic though, and try to imagine this, and then try and use language which is accessible to us rather than the biblical language, which is very inaccessible. It's very difficult to understand, and say, okay, well, this is what's going on. There's an attempt at a communication here. So then, if there's an attempt at a communication here, what's being communicated and what's being received? These are real big questions that happen. I mean, look at us. I'm standing here in my basement and I'm talking to a computer, and you're all in different places. You're all on screens. You don't see my body. You don't see you're getting a picture on a screen. You're getting a fraction of me, and to what extent is communication now just fractionated? Moses can't get everything, but he'll get as much as anybody can get, maybe more, and that's what the story is trying to tell us, that here was an exceptional human being who had an exceptional attunement to the divine frequency, and got as much as he could understand, and distilled it in those words that we recited. Ilana, and then Bob, and then anybody else. Go ahead.
I just want to say something about the cloud.
Yes.
Why is why is God appearing in a form or a symbol of a cloud? So one of the explanations that I know is a cloud could bring a blessed rain or a stormy rain. So maybe it says something also about his personality. It can be this way or that way.
Very nice. We could, with lots of ways to interpret the cloud. The cloud, it's also thick. It's difficult to see, difficult to, and it surrounds you. And it's the accessible symbol in the temple later on of God's presence. Look, God marches through the desert with the cloud, okay? And the people, sacrifice, and they create this cloud, and the incense cloud. And so all of this is an attempt to try and bring God's presence in a kind of tangible way. Bob.
I very, very much like your interpretation. And what I wanted, since you invited me to make a glass of wine comment.
Yes, please.
On some of this. I think one of the things that I've been reading recently is the question of the Moses and the people within each of us.
Okay.
That are within each of us. And so this whole question of removing ornaments, removing physicality, material sorts of things, and instead focusing on the spiritual aspect is a lot of things that I'm hearing on Torah Anytime as they interpret some of these discussions. And so part of the question is, this is not just about Moses and them, it's also about us. What is our relationship to be with each other and with Hashem?
Nice. And I would say that I'll read what you said into the story, which is, I took issue. I would take issue with the fact that Moses is up there by himself, and that God points out nobody's going to be around you. Okay, which only invites everybody to want to be around you. Okay, I described it as the mountain is a sterile place. That is to say, sterile of any other human presence and any other animal presence. And that is to say, any domesticated animal presence. It's hard for me, to imagine that this discounts the presence of wild animal. Can what if you're a fly? What if you're a little? I mean, it's a mountain. It's a living place. There are creatures on it, but you can't bring your flock there. In other words, it's only going to be you. And so if I'm
So
trying
could
to
it be
imagine, what's that?
I was going to say, or could it be a foreshadowing of the Kohen Gadol?
Possibly, and
holy...
that totally works. Okay, and I think a lot of the imagery of the temple becomes the imagery that's later on in the sanctuary and at the mountain becomes the sanctuary and the temple for sure. Okay, but the point is, the midrash is somebody snuck through, right? And somebody was able to kind of crawl up the mountain and witness this. After all, we have the story, okay? And the story works on an irony that we are there with him, okay? Somebody's telling the story. If you want to say, you want to say that God is dictating the story and God is saying, fine, okay, we'll let that go. But if you want to take a different view of this and interact with it in a kind of a way that speaks to us in a non-fundamentalist way, in a literary way, we are the witnesses. If we're, the narrator is narrating to us, and we are witnessing this scene. I just described to you the scene. I'm trying to imagine what it would have been like to be hidden behind another rock there, or a tree or something, and saying, look what's going on, look what's going on. There's a beam of light coming down. There's a cloud coming down. Oh my God, I better put the goggles on, and I got to watch this and I got to see what's going on. And I see in my imagination a guy standing there, with his eyes closed in a moment of a trance and receiving. Okay. Now, the reason why I can say that is because, not that I've experienced this, but I watch people daven, I watch people meditate. When people sit in shul and close their eyes and meditate, I guarantee you, they're not getting a beam of light coming down to them, but they're having an experience. They're having their own experience. It's peaceful. They're communicating. They're saying something, and maybe God is saying, who knows? Something special, something unique, something holy, something sacred is happening. And it's a moment that maybe a fraction, infinitesimal fraction of this. However, it's relatable. And we can all relate to it, by the way. If we all, spend a moment in our moment of prayer and close our eyes and just take ourselves to a different place and imagine, you know what? You're not going to get the essence of God, but you're going to get a moment, a fraction, however infinitesimal, of peace, of compassion, of wisdom, of insight. I'm not going to say I guarantee it, but I'm going to come close to it. You'll be different afterwards. At the very least, that's what's happening here. Okay. Take a breath, everybody. That's it.